Hi, my name is Reid Durtschi, and this is an overview of the sound design and adaptive music that I created and implemented for the open source game Cube. In this video demo, I will showcase examples of sound design and adaptive music that I created and implemented into the game using the middleware Wwise. To create a new soundscape, I removed all the sound from the original Cube game and replaced it with my own weapon and environment sounds, player and enemy vocalizations, and dynamic music compositions. The first thing I did for this project was decide which sounds I wanted to create and implement into the game, and also what level of the game I wanted to use for my demo. Using the DCP the core level, I first observed the game events triggered by the game engine in Wwise. After tallying the events observed in the game, I created an extensive asset list of proposed sound effects and music that I wanted to create and implement into the game. In all, around 120 total sound effects and variations were implemented into the game. For additional customization and variety of my map level, I first edited the light levels to bring more color and brightness to the overly dark and discolored sewer and drainage environment. I further edited the map to include new objects such as ammo, armor, and health items, new enemies, and adaptive music areas. To augment this, I edited the game's config file to include triggers and events for music and sound effects that will be activated by the player during gameplay. To bring variety and authenticity to the game, I used extensive samples from my sound libraries and personal recordings to create authentic sound effects for the game. This included sounds for character footsteps, weapon sounds, enemy and player vocalizations, and environmental sound effects. Once a sound effect was created, it was then implemented into Wwise as an event. Each sound event would often have multiple iterations of the sound effect and may include randomized pitch and volume settings that would be played back randomly anytime a player's action would trigger the event in the game. For the shotgun and rifle sounds, I also replicated the firing of the weapons and the sounds of the shells and casings being expelled from the weapon during repeated firing and loading. These sounds were timed to match the firing of the weapon in-game and were also resampled and randomized. The creation of the rifle and shotgun required multiple events to occur in succession. First, the weapon had to be fired. Second, the bullet had to be expelled from the chamber and unloaded. And finally, the shells had to be expelled and fall on the ground. Enemy sounds were created using distinct vocalizations or sampling that I thought would encompass and represent the dynamics of the enemies themselves. This could include mechanical sounds, grunt or pain sounds, and death sounds. For each enemy, I recorded samples of myself producing a vocalized sound, or I manipulated a sample from my sample library. I then used processing, such as isotope trash distortion and isotope nectar, on those samples so that they would have an enhanced presence within the game. One unique enemy sound effect that I implemented into the game was the firing of the laser by the Ogre enemy. I wanted to create a Doppler effect for the laser as it fired past the character in the game. To do this, I manipulated the positioning component in Wwise. Using the 3D attenuation editor, I adjusted the volume and distance of the laser sound. What this did was adjust the volume of the laser as it was expelled from the weapon of the Ogre. As the distance increased away from the Ogre, the volume of the laser increased as it approached the character. An important component to my Wwise demo was the creation and implementation of dynamic music. I wanted to incorporate music into the game that not only fit the environment and emotion of the game, but was also engaging and helped propel the action. To do this, I created a variety of music areas within the game that were triggered by the player's position in the level. Specifically, I created 4 tracks of adaptive music that were linked by RTPC using volume and distance as the parameters. What this meant was that the volume and track of music would adjust based on the location of the player in each defined music area of the game level. The music areas themselves contained loops of music that were of similar tempo and action-driven emotion but had just enough variety of melody and instrumentation to give each region a distinct identity. Thus, the music maintained a certain cohesiveness without feeling repetitive or irritating. Another adaptive audio feature that I added was a two-tiered adaptive audio response to the player's health. First, I implemented a low-pass filter to activate once the player's health reached a critical point. This consequently lowered the volume of the music being played to inform the player that their health was dwindling. Second, in response to a player's dwindling health, I also implemented a heartbeat sound to activate once the player's health reached below 30%. The volume and intensity of the heartbeat would continue to grow as the player's health trended towards zero. This tiered adaptive audio implementation helped bring a much better feedback system to the player, as they no longer had to constantly monitor their health meter, and instead could just react to the adaptive audio feedback and react accordingly to try to avoid their character's death.
Welcome to the core.
An additional component that I added to the game was an evil voice that would be triggered by different events in the game, depending on where you are on the level. When the event was triggered, the voice would announce something ominous or threatening.
There's no escape.
I created this voice by recording my own voice with a dry signal and then layering it with another track that ran through a vocal synth from iZotope. The end result really helped to engage the foreboding environment and leave the player in a state of anticipation. Thanks for watching my Wwise demo reel.